Okay, you guys, I've been wanting to have a good conversation on the gut microbiome for a long time, and I think today is that special day. I've got a very interesting guest today, Alex Martinez. I've had a chance to talk to him and get to know some of his thinking around these things. And long story made short, I found out that my first concern was I was going to ask him questions about getting to the root issues. And because his PR agent sent me the information that made me interested, it looked very much like a drug company, but the words being used looked like we might have an interesting conversation. And I found out that it's safe. I didn't have to cut half my questions out and try to torture this poor guy with etiology issues. But we're going to have a great conversation with Alex. He's a super cool and interesting guy, and he's got a very diverse and interesting background. So, Alex, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. To begin with, Alex, I'd like the listeners to get a sense of who you are, a bit about your background. In our conversation yesterday, I found your background really, really interesting. And I would love it maybe if you share some of the things you shared with me. But I think what was also very interesting is shall we say, the realities of being in a hospital system and sort of the system that you were in and the confrontations that you had that have ultimately led you to being where you're at now.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Paul. Yeah, it's funny when you look at the LinkedIn profile or the high end summary. It's kind of it really ignores the fact that this journey started, before I knew I was starting.
Right.
And so I have an interesting background. I grew up on a farm in central Maryland. That actually is a key part of the Genesis story. Is my parents were New Yorkers, grew up in the South Bronx. My dad grew up in tenements, and they made a massive generational leap from my grandfather working as a cleaning man to my dad working side by side with him throughout City College, and then making a huge leap to University of Pennsylvania med school.
Wow, that's a big jump.
A huge jump. And my mother rolled alongside it. They were friends. They grew up on a Trinity Avenue in the Bronx, and she followed him there. She got her master's at Temple in education, and they said, we want to raise our children as far away from that urban jungle as we can. And so my father got an opportunity to participate in, he was working in Spanish Harlem up in New York City at sort of ground zero of the AIDS epidemic. And that kind of gave him an opportunity to then work at NIH, where he was working on pneumocystis pneumonia, which was the primary cause of death in HIV patients. And so he was doing his work at NIH. That kind of was the impetus for our family to leave and move to New York. And that was when my mother kind of seized that opportunity to say, like, okay, we made the educational jump. How are we going to make the experiential jump? And we landed in a 300-year-old farmhouse in central Maryland, not knowing what we were doing, but knowing that it was different than the experience my parents had. And so that was kind of the actual genesis of all of this. Is I became a student of nature at a super, super early age, while watching my parents, my father, who was doing research kind of at like the public health level, and then settling into his role as director of an intensive care unit in Baltimore, serving a really underserved community there. And then my mother settling into her role as a special educator, focusing on children with autism and other special needs. And at the same time, I'm learning about taking care of animals, and where, I'm, myself and my brother are sort of primary there. And, we're not watching TV. I'm looking at migratory patterns. I'm, at the stream, seeing how all of these different participants are interacting, and then watching my parents serve in different capacities. And that kind of like set the impetus for me to want to serve myself. And from there, after, I'd say about 10 years as a farm laborer, it was time for me to get some experience outside of the homestead. And, I was thinking, well, I could work at a gas station, because then I would be able to get dip and cigarettes, for free. Or, and just to be candid, this entire, dilemma and fork in the road happened while I was looking through classified ads, sitting on the toilet. And I saw an ad for an early intervention opportunity for kids with special needs. And I said, well, if I need to make money, I might as well, help people. Like, that's the model that things have been in. And uh, so I went for an interview, and um, I was the only man there. I showed up in some dirty jeans and a t-shirt, and and of course there's a bunch of well-dressed young ladies there with their portfolios, knowing what they wanted to do. They walked in, and the people were shocked, and they said, "Hey, this would require changing diapers. Are you comfortable with that?" And I said, I'm not comfortable with that, and I'm not sure if the parents would be comfortable with like a young man changing their kids' diapers. I'm like, I'm just here because like the mission was attractive to me, and they were like, I think we have something just for you. They're like, what do you know about autism? And I said, well, I know a little bit. I've worked with my mom a little bit, like. And they said, we have an older group of kids. Would you be interested in being an instructional assistant? And so I started working as an IA for children with autism, notably nonverbal children, and it was like the best thing ever.
That's cool.
It was literally the best thing. It was something that it just felt like innate for me to be working with that community. And I'll kind of take a pause there, because then that was kind of the launch pad, is when I discovered that community, that I said, I can serve this community, and it feels like flow to do that.
Good. So how did you, because in our conversation yesterday, you became a lawyer, and that led to a lot of big realizations. So I'd love to hear you explain those steps between the lawyer issue and journey into the medical field, and your use of your genius as an inventor and organizer and that type of stuff.
Yeah. And so where things went is, once I found this community I was passionate about serving, I said, okay, well, where do I go? And then I, went to college. I went to UPenn, and, attempted pre-med, but I think some of my neurodivergence made it challenging to focus on some of the doctrinal scholastic needs. And so I then was focusing, really kind of created my own major. It was called Health and Societies, and it basically was like a choose your own adventure. So I was able to like pick everything I wanted. So I was focusing on public health. I was looking at cultural medical anthropology, comparative medicine. I was doing complementary and alternative medicine research before there, but I was also going into the Wharton School, like the best business school in the country, and taking all of their healthcare management courses as well. And then I said, well, hey, how do I make the biggest impact on the most people? Let me go work with the government. So I interned with CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And we were actually working on an autism waiver that would basically now allow sort of like the co-funding of healthcare in the educational context. And I was like, this is an amazing program, and it literally would affect the families that I had worked on the ground level with. And I was like,
Great.
so this is so sweet. And then the lawyers screwed it up.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, wait, okay, so something really good, an actual good program can get bungled. Like, okay, what do I have to add to my armament? Right. So this is always kind of like me just like being like, what do I need? How do I load up to be able to have the impact I want? And so I then went to University of Michigan Law School to be a healthcare attorney, to learn healthcare law, and went there. And then, the reoccurring pattern is I'm always like getting the education, but I always am ground truthing it at the same time.
Which can be a problem in school.
Yeah, it can be, but actually law school was awesome because it worked well for me because the finals are like 90% of your grade.
Good.
So I show up on the first day and the last day.
Very nice.
Like that's so it gave me like a tremendous amount of freedom to work. I actually worked at the University of Michigan healthcare system as a law clerk. So I was actually engaged in the practice of healthcare law while I was learning it. And I realized how I was like, wait, we're just perpetuating dysfunction.
Amen.
And I was like, okay, let me map out the system, let me learn it, and let me move on. And that was where I said, okay, innovation and advancing new technologies, unlocking knowledge that's siloed in these academic institutions, moving it out into the market space and where it can be sort of pollinated. That seems to be a mechanism by which to affect change in healthcare. And so I did some door knocking. I found a mentor at the business school at U of M who was running the Center for Venture Capital and Private Equity. And I said, look, I'm a law student and I want to build companies that change the world in a positive direction. And he said, I've been looking for someone like you. You want to TA a practicum. We're putting together these hit squads of graduate students, wrapping them around a professor's technology, and we're building real companies. We're spinning them out. And I was like, well, I'm grossly unqualified for this. And he said, he just handed me his book, signed it, and said, just stay one chapter ahead of everyone else. And so those are like those, right. A door cracks open and you're just like, okay, this was destined to be. And then all of a sudden, we spun out a couple companies. So I spun out 2 companies while I was in law school. And learned that business, and then that took me to Silicon Valley, where I was at like a premier startup law firm doing like the most boring work, the most interesting companies, and that's when I sort of just realized like, I want to be on the innovation side. I want to build companies. I want to do things. But what was nice about it is that I effectively been in the kitchen, right? I learned how the sausage was made, and how to get it from zero to market, and then I'll pause there because then from there that's my launch actually into innovation in the healthcare space.
When Paul started presenting his Flatten Your Abs Forever seminar at events over 20 years ago, I still remember how shocked people were to learn that flat abs had more to do with posture, breathing, and digestion than endless crunches and ab exercises. The response was amazing, and I typically had people coming up to me after a presentation and saying, "I've been training for years, but no one ever explained the body like this." It's moments like this that show how powerful the Chek approach is. When you start looking at the body as one complete system, everything changes. Now, the Chek Institute has launched an all-new version of Flatten Your Abs Forever, a complete video program that walks you step by step through the process of building strong, flat, and functional abs the right way. It uses Paul's proven system that's helped thousands of people transform their health from the inside out. And right now, you can claim the brand new Flatten Your Abs Forever bundle for free when you sign up at chek.group/flatabs. You can also find this link in the show notes. Along with the new video program, you'll also get 3 incredible bonuses from Paul and the Chek Institute. The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need ebook, a clear, practical guide to achieving lasting health. The Big Bang Workout, a time-saving routine packed with Paul's most effective exercises. And the Gut Health Reset video, your step-by-step plan to support healthy digestion and flatten your midsection naturally. That's a value of $99, and those 3 bonuses are yours free when you sign up for the Flatten Your Abs Forever bundle. It's a limited time offer, so just head to chek.group/flatabs and claim yours today. I've seen firsthand how this information can change lives. If you've been chasing results that never seem to last, this is where it starts, with real knowledge, a proven system, and the guidance of Paul and the Chek Institute.
Yes. So if there's anything on that you want to share, go ahead. I think it's interesting because, maybe you can tell us how you got from there to what you're developing with the microbiome, because that would be a nice way to help the listener understand how I chose you to talk about the microbiome today, not microbiome law.
Exactly. Right. My treatise is for bedtime. Right. So Paul, it's a really important question, because the segue, and I'll take a detour past my early digital health company creation. After, my initial entrepreneurial experience, I landed at one of the sort of pioneering mRNA drug companies.
Right.
Actually, it's called Ionis. It's actually in your backyard in Carlsbad.
Right.
And, we were working on drugs focusing on kind of monogenic, so single gene mutation diseases, where the drug could, modify the mRNA and change the protein production. And so it was while working at that company on a critical growth period that I really learned the pharma industry from the inside, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
A lot of ugly, and
a lot of bad too.
Yeah, a lot of bad, right? And saw the perverse incentives, the same ones that I had seen, in the earlier course. So really, what I am is I'm navigating through pattern recognition, while learning and doing simultaneously. And that was where I first realized I was like, there's something more than this genetic determinism premise. This is false. It's absolutely false. And when you're seeing like monogenic rare diseases and you're looking at placebo responses, right? And you're looking at inconsistent responses to drug, you're like, there's a whole other overlay here, right? And so at this time, then I say like, hey, if we're not thinking about epigenetics, if we're not thinking about these contextual environmental aspects, we are completely missing the target. And, that company, I worked on, a drug called Spinraza. It was the first drug approved for spinal muscular atrophy that had a Lazarus effect. I mean, it saved children and enabled them to develop normally if given at the right time, when otherwise they would have died. And so I was happy to have worked on that, unhappy about the pricing of it. It's $750,000 a year.
Oh my God.
And that was something I was I was very vocal about.
Something that can only be applied to Bill Gates's children.
Yeah. Or the way I think about it is the industry was focusing on rare diseases. And this is where we get to the microbiome, right? Because all of a sudden pharma R&D, it completely switched to rare diseases, because they said, oh, wow, these patients are a tiny sliver of the beneficiary pool of a covered insurance. So it's like a rounding error. So we can charge whatever we want.
Oh, God.
Right. But then everyone's ignoring that if everyone else does that, you're creating a stack, an absolute stack, and it's completely lopsided, where then you're only serving this tiny subset. And then everyone's like, hey, it's great. We can identify them genetically. And like, we can use all these biomarkers. And like, these are really sad stories, right? We can leverage patient advocacy to get the government to approve it, to get the payers to approve it, versus those big multifactorial chronic diseases that are what all of us are going to, and our loved ones are going to suffer from.
Right.
And so I saw that disproportionate focus and I said, wait a second, this is not cool. And the other aspect is risk benefit. Focusing on rare diseases where people are going to die says, hey, they're going to tolerate side effects up into the threshold of potentially dying from the treatment.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what is going on? So we've created a paradigm where biological toxicity is acceptable as long as there's informed consent, even though you have to, like, when
it's like a way to profit on the potentially dying already.
Yeah. It's saying like, hey, do you want a chance? You want a chance? Okay, here's your chance. And here's a basis for it. And then, and it's fine. Right. We live on a planet of free choice. That's important. Yeah. Right. And so I think it's important for people to have options to disproportionately focus because of a profit motive and not focus on like, where's the population level interventions.
Yeah.
And so I set out to, so I started this company with a thesis, right? Which is I want to fix problems in the pharma industry, which is biological toxicity, right? Because that's
massive,
huge, right? That's what's preventing new treatments for the broader populations, is because there's an unacceptable risk to the potential benefit. And I also thought that financial toxicity is equally bad, because if you give somebody a solution, but they have to mortgage their house, they have to
creates a huge amount of stress.
Exactly. The psychosocial stress can undermine the efficacy of any treatment you give them. And so
it's like a mafia loan.
Yeah. So I said, like, okay, I want no part of that. And then I said, okay, well, where is my opportunity? Where is the gap here? And I saw that safety is actually an arbitrage opportunity. Safety of what you're developing is the ultimate arbitrage opportunity from a regulatory and clinical development perspectives.
What do you mean by arbitrage opportunity?
So arbitrage opportunity is there's basically a disconnect in the market that you can kind of seize to your advantage. And
a loophole.
And so my premise is that if I focus on molecules that are absolutely safe, that I could leapfrog, I could jump years forward and save a lot of money. So I could save money and time. So that was my premise. And I said, okay, and I want to serve as many people as possible. I want to serve the people that have been orphaned by this disproportionate focus on the rare genetically described diseases. And I said, well, I looked at all those different diseases. These are the chronic conditions, the Parkinson's disease, the irritable bowel, the inflammatory bowel disease, autism, basically anything associated with inflammation. I said, like, wait a second. These are actually all different manifestations of common biological dysregulation, which is immune dysregulation and dysbiosis.
Almost every one of the symptoms you just mentioned, by the way, is attributed to vaccines in one research paper or another.
Yeah, well, exactly. And yeah, you look at side effect profiles, and you say, okay, so basically anything that's immunogenic, which is what vaccines are, and so and that's actually where we can and we can go into that, because what we find is that because of our hygiene, right? Because of the sterility that we've introduced,
Mm-hmm.
as well as all the antibiotic use, the
Yeah.
environmental toxins that we
Yeah.
have, is we've created dysbiosis of the microbiome, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead. So,
And the
yep,
skin,
yeah,
all
exactly,
the barriers.
exactly, every single barrier, and that's where our immune system is trained. So we have a dysregulated immune system, and then
Yeah.
whenever you're putting in a compound that's immunogenic, you're gonna have a bad outcome because you don't have a stable system that can have the balanced, appropriate response to receive any form of benefit. And so that's my thesis, right? It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to like do good. I want to have, it has to have this profile, it has to work this way. And I'm like, where am I going to find this thing? Right.
First of all, I just like to say thank you for having a heart, because to go through law school and work in all these corporations, it's very easy for someone to fall into the trap of conforming, indoctrination, pie in the sky. I'm going to make millions off this little population, and your we'll call it your soul is kind of guided you to something really important and beneficial. So I must congratulate you for not falling into the arms of the devil.
Well, yeah, thanks, Paul. And I think that's, again, I think my appreciation goes to, I think, the modeling that I saw, which was actually, I was so disgusted by pharma that I said, I'll if I have to help people one at a time, I'll do that. So actually, while I was still working at the pharmaceutical company, I was going to community college at night, getting my emergency medical responder and EMT training to go on a firefighter path. And I went through that entire pipeline to get on the list up here when I moved from Southern California to King County, because I'm a free diver as well. So I was interested in doing firefighter rescue swimming. And because that pipeline was so long, I actually started the biotech company as a fallback, because I knew the odds of me getting in were so low. And then I went through actually my own health journey after I got on the eligibility list, where I was like, there's no way I can go through, this 2-year cycle again.
Right.
And so I actually kind of landed here. But when you have that mindset where you're like, and luckily my wife, she's a pelvic floor physical therapist, and she's my muse, right? She's like my hero in all this, because I'm looking at what she does day in and day out. And we were fully prepared to have a simple life, right? Simple life, like not make a lot of money, but find fulfillment in what we were doing. And so when you have that level of insulation on a familial level and on a values level, then you're able to say, like, I'm gonna do the big swing, right? And so that's kind of what enabled me to do this. And I formed this thesis, and then I went out and I use it to create a lens, and then I did a search and evaluation, where I was just like looking at all different academic innovations at different universities, and I said, where am I going to find these magic molecules that do everything that I want them to do? That's the only thing I would put my energy behind. And I knew that it was evolutionary biology. I said, let's look at early life. We're going to find that nature is delivering us answers if we look in the right places. And I looked at sort of the early life juncture for unique molecules that were occurring there. And so I found these human milk oligosaccharides at an infant nutrition lab at UC San Diego. And, I looked at a little bit of the data, and then all of a sudden it was like, these are nature's drugs, and this is an interspecies language.
I'm super excited to let you guys know that I found an amazing energy product. I had previously fell in love with Update, but my buddy Aubrey, who is here with me right now, came to me and said, Paul, I've got something I think you'll like even better than Update. And I was suspicious because it's pretty hard to beat it. So I waited for the right day when I felt like I could really use a little energy boost, and I tried it, and I was absolutely blown away. Not only did it give me a beautiful, smooth lift, but I felt like a sense of holism, integration, like I had been doing Tai Chi. It flowered. It was like the sun shining. And I thought, wow, this is actually pretty damn good. And it's worth me telling people about. So I've got Aubrey here to tell us a little bit more specifics about his amazing new Correct Energy product. So Aubrey, tell us a little more about it. It's a phenomenal product. I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you so much. Honestly, I wouldn't have started another supplement company after Onnit if we weren't able to make this product. This product actually birthed the company.
Oh, great.
It was so good and so powerful and so important, I felt like. And it was like, we have to launch this product. We have to build a company to allow this to be the core. And like you said, the main ingredient is the same as it is in Update, which is the Infinity, that paraxanthine, which is the caffeine metabolite. So it's something that your body naturally breaks caffeine down into in the body.
Yes.
They were able to isolate that. And it really feels like in some ways, like the spirit of caffeine. Like
yes.
It killed the very essence of caffeine itself. All of the things that we wish caffeine would do and all the things we wish caffeine wouldn't do. It captures that in a really unique way.
And none of the buzz that I get from caffeine, it's just smooth. It's really amazing, smooth, uplifting energy. And I don't feel any hangover or letdown from it at all. It's just really just like a little elevator ride up to a higher level of creativity and self-expression.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful parts about it. It feels both completely subtle and absolutely powerful. Like you'll take it, may even forget that you took it, but then realize you just had the best 6 hours, that you've had in a long time. And I think it's a combination of that paraxanthine core. The Infinity is the branded core, which is a scientific advancement, isolating this caffeine metabolite. Then we do what, we always do and surround it with the best plant extracts. So Mangifera indica, it helps support the dopamine pathway. It's actually from the mango. And then Alpinia galanga, we have a branded extract of that. And that was a real insight that we had. We looked at the different plant extracts that worked well with caffeine and made the bet that those things that worked well with caffeine would work well with the caffeine metabolite. So both of these different herbal extracts actually inhibit the breakdown of dopamine in the body and then support actually what caffeine would do. So we have these natural plant extracts, including quercetin, decaf green coffee, decaf green tea. So we treated this like there's a natural intelligence to caffeine. We've isolated the intelligence of what the body does with caffeine and then surrounded it with the herbs and different compounds to give this kind of holistic formula that I really believe it's the best energy product that exists
out there. I wouldn't be here with you. I don't sell or offer anything that I don't fully trust and use myself and wouldn't give to my own family. So I'm so grateful that you created this and shared it with me. So for those of you that want to give energy a try, go to Correct Life. That's KORRECT life.com/Spirit Gym and get 15% off on your first order. Aubrey, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very interesting, this whole process. I never mentioned this to you, but Penny, who you met this morning, my wife, has a master's from Cambridge University in biological anthropology.
Amazing.
So, and her and I used to have long discussions because, long story made short, I developed a system that's now used worldwide called the Primal Pattern Movement Assessment. And I had a theory that because I've done 5 cadaver dissections and I've studied anatomy and physiology very deeply, I always held the question, why are the rhomboids at this angle? Why do the vastus medialis fibers come in at, I believe, if I remember, a 72-degree angle? Why do the thoracic extensors have predominantly fast twitch when they're really right in the middle of a high oxidative stress zone? And so I came up with a theory that the selective pressures of nature force the body to shape itself to accommodate survivability. And so when I met Penny and she had this degree in biological anthropology, I began having a lot of discussions about my theories, and then she would then share what she had learned. So it kind of like you, my wife became a sounding board, and she had enough depth of knowledge to give me good, insightful feedback, and off it went from there.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it really is so important. And I think that sort of like that cross pollination is really, I think, where like the new solutions come from. Same thing, like the I look into anthropology as well, and I say every single civilization but ours used human milk as medicine. Right? Like,
Absolutely.
you just like it's right there. It's right there.
And in nature.
Yeah.
All animals.
Exactly. It's like all animals and so I think we really kind of stumbled on a solution. And again, I think this is in some ways like this is not something like I invent, even though yes, I have patents and stuff like that. This is a rediscovery, and it's more of an educational mission to remind people that this is our birthright. This is available to everyone. This is what foundationally programmed us. And as we've moved into states of dysregulation and dysfunction, this has the potential, and honestly, all the data very strongly support that this is a reset switch.
You've definitely got to, I got to connect you with my buddy, Nathan Riley, MD, the OBGYN I told you about. For those listening, his podcast is the Holistic OBGYN. He's had countless battles with physicians over the primacy of breastfeeding and all the medical silliness around breastfeeding and everything to do with raising children. But he is a super, super smart guy. And if wait till you start having a rep session with him, man, your brain's going to explode.
I can't wait. And just as an anecdote, I was supposed to be a vegetable. I was a NICU baby. I was born up in Spanish Harlem, and I was in a NICU. I was an emergency C-section. I was loaded with antibiotics. The pediatric neurologist told my parents there was an 86% chance that I would be a vegetable. And
well, you're certainly a very intelligent vegetable.
Yeah, and exactly. So here I am standing up for all the vegetables out there, and and that's what's kind of so crazy about it. Yeah, I had it. Probably my dad thinks I had an in utero stroke, so I actually did have brain damage at birth.
Wow. And
he was a resident at the time, and so this was before resident physician hours were capped at 80 per week, so he was working 100.
Oh Jesus!
And he religiously was shuttling my mom's breast milk to me in that NICU and making sure that was my nutrition. And
well, thank God, or you probably wouldn't be here.
I credit that to the outcome. And when I look back, that's kind of where I see this thing coming full circle, and I kind of see the divinity in all of it. And so now it's as living proof. How do I get this to everyone and remind everyone?
Yeah. My next question was one I wrote up before I had a chance to meet you and talk to you based on the marketing. I think you need to talk to your marketing agent, because the way they write it up is quite a distance from who you really are and what your true intentions are. As I told you, I read some of the papers that they attached, and it was definitely not a good representation of who you are and what you're doing. I can see why they might do it, but at the same time, I think you presenting yourself more true to who you really are is a far better pathway for attracting the right people and the right audience to your product and to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback, Paul, because the way I view it is I'm a bit of a liminal figure. right? I'm still playing in the Matrix, right?
You're Hermes moving through barriers.
Exactly. And part of what I'm trying to bring here is that there's hundreds of thousands of people that actually think they are doing good within the industry, but they're allowing themselves to be made malleable by the perverse incentives that dictate things.
Yeah.
And so I think there is an opportunity to change things from the inside out, to captivate, meet people where they are, right? And meet people with the evidentiary basis. Like, for example, with what I have, and we'll talk a little bit later about it. I am starting a direct to consumer access point for these so that people can self-direct their use of these today based on the data we have today. But when I talk to conventional, allopathic doctors, I have to convince them and their colleagues using the empirical evidentiary standard of clinical data. And so I think that's my opportunity to, so I play in both worlds. And so that's kind of, and from, the base or the consensus reality perspectives, I still need to talk to financiers at that, at that level. But I hear you, and I really appreciate that. And I think what we'll have to do is we'll probably have to do a little bit more of a precision profile for the different audience, because I get on the line with you and we resonate, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you're not who I thought you were going to be. And
I thought I was going to be having a knockdown, drag out debate with you, which I was looking forward to, okay. but I'm glad I didn't have to do that, because the chances are good that the person would have said, you cannot publish this podcast, because I'm pretty torturous in a debate on these issues. But, yeah. So the question that I was going to ask you is your technology intended to generate profits or to actually help people address long-term causes of microbiome dysfunction, or both? But I think you've made it pretty clear the goal is to really help people. And certainly you have to make money, or you can't feed your family and have fair enterprise. So yeah. What I think we need to make clear, though, is what exactly is the product that you have developed, and is that available yet?
Okay. So, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. So the products are imminently going to be available. They're not readily accessible. And that's kind of the challenge that I've been working through. And I've been doing this for 7 years, by the way. So yeah, and I've mapped this out. And so right now I have Intrinsic Medicine, which is the pharmaceutical research and development company. It's going to do things the FDA regulated way. We've had numerous meetings with FDA. We're getting ready to run a phase 2 program using our lead human milk oligosaccharide. There are 200 of these special, they're sugars found in breast milk, but they are non-caloric. The human body cannot metabolize these for caloric energy. So you're like, what are these? And so
there must be information molecules.
They're information molecules. They're preferential substrates for, namely, bifidobacterium, which is like the keystone bacteria, commensal bacteria that probably co-evolved with us and perhaps guided our evolution.
Very much so, probably, right? Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I always reframe people. I say, look, the gut starts here at your mouth, right? It goes from mouth to anus. And if you extract it, what is it? It's a segmented worm.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you say, well, when did the microbiome occur, right? So the first multicellular organisms were, worms, and they were open systems. And how did they protect that internal barrier as they developed some complexity and space beyond the lumen? And with symbiotes, with biofilm colonies of microbes. And so it's actually that initial union and partnership that then said, we can get more complex from here.
Protein is an essential part of everyday life, but where you get your protein from and when you consume it can make a huge difference. Organifi's Complete Protein makes it easy for you to get high-quality, clean protein into your meals. Start your day with a breakfast shake, and you'll find the ingredients in Organifi's Complete Protein work together to help reduce cravings all day, as well as providing organic vitamins and minerals. People often assume that if something is organic, it's also free from pesticides and residues. Sadly, that isn't always true. Even in the cleanest of conditions, contamination is still possible. Although Organifi is not required to test for things like glyphosate residue and other chemicals that can affect your health, they take the extra step and spend the extra money to thoroughly test their protein before it goes out the door and into your home. Organifi's Complete Protein is a unique combination of 3 complex plant-based proteins and other organic whole foods, making it a great choice for those who struggle with bloating or indigestion from dairy or whey protein powders. It comes in 2 great flavors, chocolate or vanilla, and is easy to mix up on its own or add some fruit, nuts, and seeds to make a delicious smoothie. My personal favorite is blending the vanilla with bananas and almond butter. To try Organifi's Complete Protein and save 20%, go to Organifi.com/Chek20 and use the promo code Chek20. That's Organifi.com/Chek20 and use Chek20 for a 20% discount.
If I could just share something too, embryologically, if I remember my study of embryology, pretty much the whole body grows out of the gut too, even the brain.
Exactly. Bingo. Right. So it's a great point, Paul. In like the mainstream science, did you know you have a second brain in your gut?
Yeah.
No, it's probably your first. It was your first.
Exactly right. And on that, are you familiar with the Abdominal and Pelvic Brain book by Byron Robinson, MD?
Not that book, the concept, but not that book. I need to.
Oh, well, I'll tell you a short story.
Yes, please.
I was studying functional medicine with Dr. Bill Timmons, who is the creator of the salivary test. And he was my mentor for 3 years. And one of the teachers for his organizations was a guy named Dr. Tom, and I can't remember his last name, but he had a MD, PhD from Russia, and he was also an American MD and a chiropractor. He was a very smart guy. And one day he came to visit me in my office, and he had a book called The Abdominal Brain, which was published, 10, 15 years ago now. It was probably 2005 or so, or even before that, somewhere between 2000 and 2005. And he was all excited about this book. And he's like, oh, look at all this new research. And I looked at him and I said, that is not new research. That is actually quite old. And it's because these people don't do enough research themselves that they think this is new. I said, follow me. And I walked him into my library and I handed him the first edition of The Abdominal and Pelvic Brain by Byron Robinson, MD, written in 1899. Then I handed him the second edition in 1907, which is about 500 pages, and it is mind-blowing. Byron Robinson, MD, was a genius physician.
Yeah.
And all these complex drawings of the solar plexus and the ganglia. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is like Alex Gray level art of anatomy, and he drew them himself.
Amazing.
He did hundreds and hundreds of autopsies and wrote many excellent articles. His section in there on the causes of constipation and what constipation is probably the most comprehensive thing I've ever read in my life on constipation. So you've got to track it down. Some of my students have told me they've been able to find it on the internet for free, but that book probably cost, Penny got me the first edition for a birthday gift one year. And I know to buy that book now would be probably somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000. And the second edition, I think, cost me, $450 from a rare medical book distributor. But it was a mind-blowing book. And for what you're doing to see the history of that and many of the things he says today would be very valid right this second. You'll have a heyday in my library when you come visit me one
Yeah,
day.
I can't wait, and I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because
But the doctor
yeah.
about shit his pants, by the way. He's like, what the hell is this? Where the fuck did you come across this stuff?
Right.
And I said, look, this is all rare medical books. I've been studying these things for years. I've got thousands and thousands of dollars worth of rare medical books that are full of information that should be in medical training right now.
It should be, and it was totally forgotten. I mean, it's so
or Rockefellered.
True, exactly. Yeah, there was a clear barrier, and it's funny because the anecdote that I'll share, is that one of the things we look at is that most people who know about the gut microbiome have heard of the fecal microbiota transplants, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
And their transformative impact in different diseases where a dysbiosis is present. That's not new either, right? I have ancient Chinese references, and I think it was like over 30 different types of feces-based medicine from specific animals, including human beings, where they would do a preparation of fresh fecal juice, as unappetizing as that is. But when you actually look at what they're doing, is specific bacterial implants,
yes,
from different species to re-regulate a variety of different maladies. And I look at that and I was like, that's 3,500 years old.
Yes,
it's right there. And then, yeah.
You were raised on a farm. Look, answer this question. How many times have you seen dogs, cats, and animals walk up to each other for the first time and smell each other's butt? Because they're reading, their microbiome is reading the microbiome of the other person. And not to get too wild, but I think there's a lot to be said about that with human sexual interactions as well. I think we've made sex such a puritanical thing that we've kind of obliterated our instinctual drives. And I can give you an example of why this sort of instincts to smell and to taste a potential partner are so important. I didn't know this was possible for this to happen, but one of my best friends, he was a buddy of mine in high school, but when I raced stock cars, he was one of my chief sponsors. And when he was in high school, he had a really beautiful girlfriend, but every time he would kiss her or her saliva would touch him or her, they would both break out in hives. And so they both had to go to the doctor to figure out what was wrong. But what they found out is they actually had an allergy to each other, which is really they had incompatible microbiomes.
Yeah.
And they were basically, as soon as the saliva of one touched the other, the microbiomes in the bacteria would go to war. And so it would trigger a global immune response, and they'd both be covered in hives. And it was really heartbreaking because he really was in love with her and she with him, but they could not have any kind of sexual interactions. And why I'm bringing that up is because I think instinctually we already know that we might not be compatible with certain people. And so we have ways, if we just follow our instincts of smelling and tasting, and no matter how beautiful it is, they could be repulsive to you at an instinctual level. And I think this is just a way of saying, we have gotten so far from the innate intelligence of nature in our own bodies with all this medicalization of everything that it's literally destroying not only human life, but all life, because the medicalization of humanity is also the medicalization of farming and ecological control. And on it goes to the point now we're hanging right on the edge of a major worldwide ecological crisis on many levels, which I won't railroad us into exploring because I have so much I want to talk to you about. I'm just so grateful that you came from the background you did, you developed the observational skills you did, and you've learned to see through the bullshit to get to the real good shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really well put, Paul. We've put up barriers and distance ourselves. Because I completely believe that to what we were talking about earlier. This is a language, right? And we can think about the microbiome as an environmental sensing organ as well, right? It's the only place where you're really also taking something external and you're bringing it inside, right?
Yes.
And we also know that we all are actually walking around in microbial clouds as well that are unique to us, right? So we
Yes.
actually have a microbial aura, and
Mhm.
that's communicating. We know that our nose, right, our mouth have microbiomes, and those are all speaking and directly linked to our nervous system and
Yeah.
controlling behavior,
Mhm.
our perception of reality, and as you put it nicely, also our social interactions. And that's why you have a gut sense about a person, right?
Exactly.
Like those are real things. And
And I think too that the vagus nerve is really a big part of that linking highway between the cognitive centers of the brain and the instinctual centers of the body and the gut center of the body. In other words, I think that the vagus is actually in touch with the solar plexus and all the key glands and organs, and it's actually reading the microbial information and integrating it at the brain level to create a regulatory gut-brain axis.
Absolutely, and that's completely in point, right? That is the big mediator of this. I would say that's like the direct pathway, and then there's an indirect pathway
Yeah.
through the postbiotics, the metabolites that are produced, that are then circulating systemically, and which are bioactive at like picomolar concentrations, teeny tiny concentrations that blow traditional pharmacology out of the water, right? It's so one of the
There's another pathway too. When you're ready, I'll talk to you about it.
Okay. And one of the interesting things, just to help people appreciate, these human milk oligosaccharides, which are, foundationally in milk to promote the colonization of the beneficial microbes, but simultaneously they directly are interfacing with the gut cells, promoting the maturation of intestinal epithelial cells, as well as both the innate and the adaptive immune system. So
Yes.
they're balancing the immune response, which I believe in early life is like more like Th1, like it's like treats everything like it's dangerous, and balancing the Th1, Th2 immune response so that you are creating a tolerogenic environment where the body can grow. So it's not attacking fast growing tissues, but at the same time, it's having a balanced response to pathogens and to damage, so it could repair without turning that off switch on development and just being in a hyper pro-inflammatory state, which ultimately will have collateral damage on tissue long term. And so this is a programmatic molecule, and one of the things that it also programs is cognitive function, right? And in studies, if in animal studies, and hopefully we're moving beyond those, because that's another aspect here in terms of our advocacy position when we go to the FDA, is we say these are human molecules, they're safe, they've proven safe in infants and adults. You have said they're generally recognized as safe molecules to be used in infant formula. We don't need animal studies.
No.
We don't need to hurt any more animals. But the legacy of those animals that were sacrificed for the body of evidence show that, the leading molecule, our lead molecule, enhances executive function in mammals. And if you cut the vagus nerve, you lose that benefit. So we know there's a direct pathway. We know that these are beyond just the microbiome. They're directly docking and interfacing with the enteric nervous system as well, and controlling that pathway. So I'll pause there because I want to hear about your other pathway?
Well, I'll just throw a little anatomy on the table too for the listener. The enteric nervous system, which is the solar plexus largely, has a total neuron count as big as the brainstem and the entire spinal cord. So it literally, like a lot of people don't realize, there is literally a brain-sized network in the gut system. And that's a very significant, I mean, when you look at the size of the nervous system of the heart, I can't remember exactly how many neurons it is, but it's a tiny little thing compared to the solar plexus or the gut brain. But it also, heart mass research and many others shows how massively important it is to our overall capacity for empathy and for connection and for precognitive awareness, and things like that. So if but the point I'm making is if you look at the size of the heart's nervous system, which is integral to the heart because it goes with the heart when they do a heart transplant, and you say, okay, well, if that's that powerful, how powerful must the solar plexus or the abdominal brain and pelvic brain be? It's it's very, very significant, but still to this day, hardly even thought about. And so the system I was going to mention is the biophoton system, because the biophoton system communicates at the speed of light. It was identified by the research of Fritz Albert Popp and has been expanded. I've got entire books on it in my library. But without a long to do, it's another system of communication beyond a myelin pathway or a neurological pathway, beyond a chemical pathway, and it's faster by far than chemicals or nerve conduction, and it's very, very real. And when we're talking, and I'm listening to you talk about all this and the bacteria, I feel inspired to share something very interesting with you. I don't know if you've ever spent any time communicating with plants or subtle energies, but I do a lot of that work. I have to read people's energies fields and communicate with their bodies. And I communicate regularly with all living things. And an experiment you can do that's quite profound. If you take a glass of drinking water and just direct your consciousness to it and put your hands close to it, and say to the water with your intention directed at it, if you can hear me, expand the energy coming out of you, and you'll feel a surge of energy come out of it. There's no question water's conscious.
Yes.
Now, of course, water's also full of bacteria and living organisms. But if you do that for a little bit and communicate with it, ask it questions and things like that, then I started testing this with Bioptimizer's Microbiome breakthrough product, which is a gut support bacterial product. If you stir a scoop of that into the water and then you start talking to it, the level of consciousness goes up radically. The speed that it communicates, the energy that it produces, it's just like you take the water and it just like supercharges it. And so through these experiments I was doing, I learned, wow, the bacteria are like a wildly powerful form of intelligence and life, that a lot of people just are totally disconnected with because their consciousness is so trapped in their left brain that they're detached from the language of nature.
Hi, everybody. I know that you're all aware of the importance of vitamin C. There is a mountain of research on it, but not all C is created equally. I love Paleo Valley's Essential C Complex because it is the real deal, bioavailable, and I wanted you to hear right from Autumn Smith, founder of Paleo Valley, why their Essential C Complex is so unique and something you definitely want for your family and your children. Autumn, tell us about your Essential C Complex.
Well, I was shocked to learn as a holistic nutritionist that 90%, over 90% of the vitamin C on the market is derived from genetically modified corn, and then it's processed with highly volatile acids. And so I knew I had to find a better way to get all of the powerful benefits of vitamin C. So what I did was I dove into the research and I found the 3 most vitamin C rich superfoods on the planet. That's unripe acerola cherry and camu camu and amla berry. And then I just packed them into capsules. And the benefits are amazing because you're not only getting vitamin C, but all of the other wonderful benefits that come from these amazing superfoods.
To get your Paleo Valley Essential C to help support a healthy immune system and get 15% off, go to paleovalley.com/Chek15. That's paleovalley.com/CHEK15 for a 15% savings.
Exactly. And it's an interesting point, Paul. And that's where, I'm sort of full spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And so I definitely have a hat that's in kind of the traditional allopathic world, but I've been exploring a lot of this other stuff myself, right? Because at the end of the day, this is sort of an insider job to remind us all, meeting as many people sort of where they are cognitively,
Yeah.
that we're participants in nature, right? It's as we discussed yesterday, reminding people that we have an ecology within us, and that's fractal of our participation in the larger ecology. And I've had my own experiences actually when I was doing breath work, when I first started doing breath work, and I'm a free diver. So, I learned very early on, that was actually, I think, a big paradigm shift for me, because I was right in the middle. I was actually starting out my, traditional biopharmaceutical career, and I started freediving and took control of my autonomic nervous system. And I said, oh, I'm doing stuff that you talk to most doctors, they're like, you can't control your heart rate consciously. I'm like, I'm doing that. And, I'm diving hundreds of feet, to, and proving that's the case. So when I started doing breath work, what actually came up to me was I was listening to something and I was trying to figure out what it was. And I called them the community, and it was my microbiome and the cells in my body that those were directly interfacing with. And I recognized that there was a level of consciousness there, a very different one. And also I recognize that it's a quantum consciousness, right?
Yes, it is.
Because when we think about, and I think this is the next frontier of understanding the microbiome, is we can only see what is culturable, right? But we can culture. But when you talk about biophotons, right? When we talk about bacteria that can directly feed off of electrons, right? We're not culturing those, but we know from some of the, it's probably like the Antarctic, like the extremophile type research, that they're putting battery probes into soil and they're saying, wait a second, there are microbes on this and they're feeding directly on quantum particles.
Yeah, and there's a whole field now of quantum biology.
Exactly. And so we don't even know what's happening on a full ecological level because we can't culture it. And what we know is that these keystone species are cross-feeding, and, they're upstream of probably some dark matter, of a dark matter ecosystem that we can't even comprehend quite yet.
Yeah. Potentially dark matter. That's a debatable theory.
Well, I'm just using that as a term,
an X factor.
As an X factor, just that there's a hidden, a sort of a shadow ecosystem that's cross-feeding on molecules that we can't culture effectively and see. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
You reminded me of a profound experience I had many years ago. I started doing research with psychedelics in 2006. I did a year of training with a doctor that uses them to help people heal clinically. And so I spent a year working as an assistant to conduct these healing ceremonies to learn how to use them. And I did, in that first year, I did about 50 journeys with him. And I would trade him work on his body for his watching over me and guiding me. And so it opened me up so much. And it was just such a profound expansion of my conscious connection to everything around me. And also a great way to explore a lot of my, shall we say, hypothesis about God and life. And I was visiting my mother in Ashland, Oregon, many years ago. And I can't remember the name of the park there in Ashland. It's a beautiful, beautiful park, the huge mountainous park right down in the city, starts out in the city of Ashland, Oregon. And at the time, I was doing a lot of research with LSD. And so my soul directed me to take 5 hits of LSD. So probably five times 75. I think those are 75 microgram hits, maybe 100. Enough of a dose to really open you up.
Yeah.
And my soul guided me to a creek and told me to lay down next to the creek. And so it took me about an hour to hike to this place. I took the medicine at the start of the hike, and I always carry my notebooks and my art stuff. I carry, colored watercolor pens and things like that, because I like to do art to describe what I'm seeing and feeling. And I was laying next to this creek, and all of a sudden I began hearing this conversation, was all I could say. Like there was a wild conversation, and I could sense it communicating not only with me, but it was as though the whole creek was talking to itself. And I said to my soul, what on earth am I hearing? And my soul directed my eyes to the water, and my soul said, you are hearing the bacterial colonies in the creek communicating with all the plants and even the fish in the water, and they're all talking to each other. And that's how they regulate the health of their own ecosystem. They work together to do that. It was just a mind-blowing experience. I laid there for probably 5 hours, completely blown away. And then I would hear a certain sound, and my soul would direct my eyes, and I would see a fish or a crayfish, and I would be able to isolate which sounds were coming from which of these organisms. And so, this is only to say that what's inside of us is all around us, which brings up a point. I created an acronym I'd love to share with you that I teach in my holistic lifestyle coaching program. It's called the ECHO, ECHO, and it stands for energy, chemistry, hydration, organisms. And so what I teach my students in their training is that everything that we eat or relate to is a form of energy. Everything we eat or drink is a form of chemistry, and we have to be adequately hydrated or we'll have health problems, and we have to pay attention to the organisms we eat. And whatever we do to the energy, chemistry, hydration, or organisms, water or organisms in the environment will directly impact us. And so I show how if you make the purchases of the foods and support the farmers that are taking care of the energy, chemistry, hydration, and organisms of the land, and you eat that food, then you mutually support yourself. And so you become conscious and coherent and interconnected with even at whether it's conscious or not, it'll be at the unconscious level. And so you naturally begin to become more aware of life in and around you and make life affirmative choices. Yep. But if you start spraying glyphosate everywhere and pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, and drugging yourself and using antibiotics, then what happens is you begin to behave in a way that furthers the same behavior in the environment, which further cuts you off from the environment. So basically, you either create the pendulum of life or the pendulum of death. But it's human beings, unfortunately, with the powers of their cerebral cortex that are making choices that are very against life and against the instincts. So we've now got this conundrum, which you described very well in your introduction of how you got here. But what I'd love to do is maybe next, if you could take us into your own explanation for the people that may not have much understanding of what the microbiome is, and maybe share what science has identified regarding its function, its nature, and its importance. If there's things that you want to share that go beyond what we've just covered.
Okay, so let's talk about the gut microbiome. So the gut microbiome is the ecosystem of microbes that exist within our gastrointestinal tract. And what's really important about this is there are trillions of microbes. And when we think about the amount of genetic material that they have, it's 10 times what is encoded, within our own DNA. So there's a tremendous amount of information being processed via this ecosystem.
And just to interject, I think it's important to state that is extremely important for our biological diversity. People keep focusing on human genomes, but they don't realize that the diversity of the gut microbiome is very, very important. And when you start taking things like antibiotics, you really put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah, and it's an important part, and this is where I'll always go back to the foundation that we're trying to paint to people, but I do want to address the point, which is diverse ecosystems are the ones that thrive and that have health and resilience. And so it's the same in our microbiome. Is we want a diverse, healthy microbiome. What happens with antibiotics? So let's just, because a lot of people are more familiar with it. So we have a cooperative group of bacteria. They're inside of our gut. They're able to communicate directly to our nervous system and our immune system. They're saying, hey, we're the good guys. We're going to keep all of the external things that you bring inside. We're going to keep them in check and help you process them and feed them. And we're going to shuttle nutrients to you, right? So it's actually, if we think about this, instead of just being, oh, there's bacteria inside me, this is an acquired microbial immune system, and they're working as a symbiote with us, and we're giving them safe haven and a place.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Exactly. Hopefully. Right. So it's like, are we performing our part of the deal? And the antibiotic use, the continued exposure to toxins, that's where maybe we're not fulfilling our part of the deal.
And alcohol.
Exactly.
Alcohol is another bad one. Yep. Medical drugs is another problem across the board.
Exactly. And there was a recent publication showing that the vast majority of prescription drugs are negatively impacting the microbiome. In fact, all of the inactives, what are called the inactive ingredients, guess what? They are active at the microbiome level. So we have this beautiful community. It's a community that's directly talking to the cells in our body, and they have like a red phone line right to our brain, from where they sit. And so this is the way I would think about the microbiome is more of, there's a great paper. It was published last year. It was in Nature. It's signal transduction and targeted therapy. And it's as close to kind of like the paper that I would have written talking about this, which is the microbiome are symbiotes that comprise an acquired microbial immunity. And that's supposed to be transferred maternally, right? Through a vaginal birth. The birth canal is what promotes the initial colonization.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, we are we actually are supposed to be dirty at birth, right? That is actually an inoculation that was supposed to happen. And then immediately being breastfed milk that has human milk oligosaccharides, the preferred substrates, immediately start feeding that inoculized line of microbiota, which forms the basis of the foundational microbiome.
And also the child sucking the mother's nipple, which is bringing in her bacteria into its body.
Bingo. Is we think about the mother and the infant as the dyad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is a system, and breastfeeding is absolutely a diagnostic system. It's bidirectional, because what we know, we've even seen that these human milk oligosaccharides, they change. They're dynamic, and so it's dynamic to the needs. And that saliva input, I absolutely believe that the nipple has diagnostic capabilities, and
Totally.
and so there's a feedback loop where the mammary glands then produce different oligosaccharides in a dynamic pattern to guide and nurture that initial inoculation, that baby's microbiome, because what we know in human development is the first 1,000 days, right? That's when you become immunocompetent. That's when your immune system has been trained. That's when your gut goes from, immature, completely permeable, to the barrier that you're going to go out into the world and start taking the outside world inside.
Yeah. And the feedback loop between the baby's saliva and the mother's breast and breast milk is also regulating hormone levels in the child's body, in the infant's body, to support its adaptability and survivability.
Yep.
So there's a total, very, very intelligent two-way communication system going on. And isn't it just absolutely fucking sickening how the medical association handles issues of breastfeeding and all that? I mean, it just makes me want to vomit all that stuff.
It's getting better, but it is such a mark on, just like the fact that has been disrupted, the fact that C-sections are viewed as like the norm, just right, because we've industrialized this, right? I mean, I think we're a self-domesticated species, and we've industrialized ourselves, and we've created a fracture at such an important juncture. And look, this is responsible for the chronic disease epidemic that we have. I'm just like flat out, this is it. It's like you're putting moms on antibiotics, you're putting the kids on antibiotics, like C-section, you're doing surgery, so everything's antibiotic. They don't get the initial inoculation. Now I think moms are waking up that the breast is best. That is why skin to skin contact's so important, right? It's just, in the first 1,000 days, the baby basically is in sort of boot up mode, and we need to guide it, all these systems. When we look at human milk, it actually is a chrononutrient, right? Like imagine this, and I still don't see people widely talking about it, but it's like milk in the morning, guess what? It has cortisol in it, right? That's your wake up hormone, right? And milk at night, what does it have? Wait, it has melatonin in it. Oh, so it literally has it's
supporting the circadian cycle.
It's the circadian cycle, because the baby's not quite there yet, so it's guiding. So you even have moms like that pump milk, and they're like, oh, what should I do? And I'm like, time of day, time of feeding for that milk. That's
very important.
super important. And it's the same thing. It's like the milk contains antibodies, right? That the baby's body's not online to produce yet. So it's a bridging mechanism. It's a bridging and training mechanism. And so these oligosaccharides in milk, and just to give people an understanding of this. So you're born, ideally through the birth canal, you have this initial inoculation of your mother's microbiome. She immediately becomes feeding it. There's this dynamic feedback loop where she's using the oligosaccharides to speak directly to this growing microbial community inside of you. And that's really how the system is supposed to work. And then that microbial community combined with these oligosaccharides is training your immune system to recognize self versus not self, and determine what's the appropriate response to meet an external threat while promoting growth, always being an upward growth and development trajectory, which because inflammation is a master switch between, growth and regenerate, or just maintain with collateral or a maintenance function, where then you just have collateral damage on tissue. And that's why when you look at, children that have, early inflammatory disease, early sort of allergies, if you talk about like the vaccine load, right? You are eliciting a massive inflammatory response, and the trade-off there is things like neurological development.
Not to mention the poisoning.
Yeah. Not to mention, the other things, but it's like if you're triggering an inflammatory reaction, right? Inflammation is supposed to be acute. It is adaptive when it is acute. So less than 3 weeks, right? And that's like with a major wound. But if you are creating these massive inflammatory reactions, the body is saying like, okay, well, we can't grow, we can't develop, we can't allocate those resources. We're going to focus on putting out this fire and addressing the existential biological need. And so, so this is just kind of where, we have to be like very careful in this first 1,000 days, and how this beautiful, elegant system is really just designed to train, to colonize and set this foundation of the symbiotic ecosystem within us, that then is in turn training our immune system, and also nourishing the somatic cells in our body as they differentiate and grow into very specific tissues.
Yeah, there's another thing that a lot of people aren't aware of. I don't even know how many medical doctors and nurses would be aware of this, but technically speaking, the inner lumen of the gut tube, when something's in there, it's not in your body until it passes through the gut wall, such as being brought in by the microvilli of the small intestine. And so what you have is this defense mechanism within the gut tube. And it's almost like when you go to the border control, if you fly to another country, they got to check your passport. They got to make sure you don't have a criminal record. And so, one of the ways I try to describe it is think of your gut tube as the border patrol agents, and the bacteria are the ones that have come from your mother and have come from healthy food and healthy environment, if you're fortunate. And so they're already tuned through mother's feedback loop and through self-recognition as to what is and isn't compatible with that body. And if that system gets disrupted, it's kind of like you got stone border control, kind of like what happened during COVID, and the Biden administration was letting rapists, criminals, and murderers through the borders. And people are freaking out about, why all the violence is going up, and they're not paying attention to what's actually going on. And I think I'm sharing this because it's important to understand technically something's not in your body. I mean, most people think, if you're chewing food, it's in your body. But from a physiological and scientific perspective, it's not in your body till it passes through the membrane of the entron, which is the gut tube beginning with the mouth and ending at the anus.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually a metaphor that I use as well, right? It's border crossing, and it's like I think about it as this is a single cell border we're talking about, right? It is like what's outside your body and what's inside your body is literally like a single cell like thickness, like, and talking about sort of like a border agents, it's like the microbiome. They are kind of like the border and customs allies of the foreign country, right? And then you have your innate immune system right there, and that's the home team's border control, and there's cooperation, and when it works well, it works extremely well. But when it's perturbed, you have a whole host of problems. And so we have a very elegant system that's designed to make sure that this functions appropriately, and we've perturbed it on so many levels. And the entire premise of what we're doing is looking and saying, okay, these are the foundational molecules, and unfortunately so many people have been disconnected from them through not having access to breast milk, not having a birth canal birth, and having early life antibiotic use, which we know is
rampant.
Early life antibiotic use. What is it? It's associated with allergies. It's associated with asthma, type 1 diabetes,
cognitive disorders,
obesity. Yeah, exactly. Cognitive function. Like, I mean, it's very simple. When you look at industrialized agriculture, it's like, what do they used to do to increase poundage of animals? You give them antibiotics, they become obese.
Yeah.
Right. It's very, very simple. Right.
Yeah.
And so we can look at that and we say, well, what's the solution here? And so our premise is very simple. This is what you're supposed to have when you're born. And if you don't have that, or if that system has been completely disrupted, this is biologically hard coded to be a reset switch that we can use to rewild.
Yeah, good term.
Rewild your gut microbiome and intestinal infrastructure.
So you're talking about the fructo-oligosaccharides and things like that. Is your approach also inclusive of friendly probiotics, like the right bacteria strains as well?
So this is interesting. So fructo-oligosaccharides are different than human milk oligosaccharides.
Okay.
And the fructo-oligosaccharides are what I would call the transitional oligosaccharides. So after weaning is complete, then that's where, what would you in an adaptive context feed an infant? They start eating fruit, right? And that would bridge. And we actually know that there's a maturation. The bifidobacteria actually has different subspecies: infantis, adolescence, right? It actually matures as the oligosaccharide substrates, the prebiotics, the fermentable fiber intake is transitioning away from a mother's milk to external from plants. One of the aspects that you're talking about is there like a symbiotic approach where you have a specific bacteria plus the oligosaccharides, and this is where things actually kind of get interesting, because going back to my fundamental premise, which is also a first do no harm concept, I think that I do believe probiotics have utility, but it's almost what the bug is doing is probably more important than who they are. And so that's where I think probiotics have a more of a limited immunostimulatory effect, where if you're not giving them the resources, the fiber, the substrates that they need to act in their highest capacity, that then you're not going to get the benefit. And that's why I think just continually adding the same, like the way I would help people conceptualize this is like, you're not going to rebuild an ecosystem by dumping a bunch of buffalo out of a helicopter, right? You have to restore the grasslands, right? And that's so literally it starts at the fiber. It starts at the fiber, and then you can get your keystone species in, and then they terraform the rest of the environment. So I do think that in the future we will have symbiotic approaches to have more immediate impacts. But the beauty of what we've done is what we've seen is you can put the HMOs in. Can you just hold on 1 second?
Sure.
Okay. As you can put the HMOs in, and you can see the same effects. Oh, okay. So you can apply the HMOs, and you can have the same effects as a fecal microbiota transplant. So
HMO mean
human milk oligosaccharide.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's one of the things we talked about, Paul, is like it's so simple, but the fact that the acronym for these amazing beneficent molecules is HMO, I think has absolutely hampered and hindered their awareness, just from a lexicon challenge.
Remember when I was talking to you in preparation for the podcast, I said, you're confusing me. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Because we're so ingrained, right? There's so much there.
Well, there's a question I want to ask you, because the HMOs, it's human milk oligosaccharides. Yes. I know from my own research and observation and common sense that the fetus is built out of the food from the mother's environment. So if for example, when your wife got pregnant,
yes,
she was eating the food that produced the molecules to build your child's body out of the environment that she lived in. Yeah. So the whole body is actually in resonance with the environment that it comes from. I could tell you stories about my own experience of that, but I won't sidetrack us. So the question I'm asking you is, how does the implementation of the HMOs help restore the environmental connection that would normally have come from the food and the bacteria, because the bacteria is coming in through the air, the water, and the food that the mother's consuming that ultimately ends up in the child's body. So if you give the HMOs to somebody that does not have the right bacterial profile, how do they restore connection and have a symbiotic relationship? Because how do you avoid feeding the wrong profile of bacteria is the question.
Is a great question. Okay, so that's the beauty here of these molecules. It's why they're different than plant oligosaccharides. These are the preferential substrate for those bacteria that you want to be colonized. And in fact, these, so there's kind of multiple functions of these. So let me just kind of roll through. So as I mentioned, they have immunomodulatory effect, right? They balance the innate and the adaptive immune system. They mature the intestinal epithelial cells. They have direct anti-inflammatory effects, like in context, right? So as that initial colonization is occurring, they're enabling it. They're making sure the good bugs are not attacked. It's not a friendly fire situation. And then they are the preferential substrates that enable those beneficial microbes to outcompete against. And then they are also serving as soluble receptor decoys for the pathogenic bacteria. So for example, invasive E. coli's Clostridium actually will bind to certain HMOs, milk oligosaccharides, and think that they're entering a cell or docking to a cell, and
So it tricks them.
instead it tricks them and they're being passed out. And so that's how it enables this foundational terraforming. And we're talking like enterotoxins, they'll bind to that. Bacteria will bind to it. Viruses and parasites will bind to it. And so this is, I mean, the natural intelligence into the design of a molecule that can do all of these things is so profound. So the premise here is that if a human, and even an adult human who maybe who missed all those early access points to be inoculated with the beneficial commensal bugs, if they're taking HMOs, they've become the culture. And then as they go through their environment in a way where they're interacting with the microbial aspects, where they're, having interactions with other human beings, right? You can be reseeded, right? We know that members of a household, when there's harmony within the household, guess what? Their microbiomes look the same. And we know, right? We know that our microbiomes, like our microbiomes can change within 3 days, right? If we go embed ourselves with a tribe somewhere, our microbiome will shift in 3 days, right?
Yeah.
So we're creating the context for the rewilding, but it's an adaptive rewilding, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
A question I have for you, for the listener and from my own interest, is you're talking about a very, very comprehensive transfer of information, and it seems to be that these molecules are really intelligent in and of themselves, which makes them almost like living organisms. So I'm wondering, what can you say about that? But what is the construct of them? Are they primarily amino acids? Are they amino acids and carbohydrates? Are they amino acids, carbohydrates, and fats? And for example, in your hormone system, you have hormones that are pure amino acids. You have hormones that are carbohydrate molecules and amino acids, and you have some that are lipoprotein based. So glycoprotein, protein, and lipoprotein based. What is the construction of these molecules?
Yeah, they so what's very fascinating is they are actually based on, it's pretty simple. It's like glucose and lactose, and so they typically have a galactose backbone, and then there's a different moiety, so they have a different end. So for example, like the leading one is, it might have a fucose moiety, and the bond angle really is what's important. And there's definitely 3 different classes. There's over between 200 and 1,000 different structures, but there is a 3 different categories. There's fucosylated, there's neutral ones, and then there are sialated ones that have a sialic acid on them. And what's really fascinating is when we look at these core building blocks, with, again, this like a galactose backbone, and then just adding, and then just adding these different moieties, there are more potential structures than there are stars in the universe. So it's above Avogadro's numbers. So it's only through some intense selection and conservation exercise that we have these distinct structures. And I think that's where their intelligence comes from. So this is basically an exercise in molecule screening that surpasses the computational capacity that we currently have today, right? And so that's, I think, where we see kind of they're crystals. They're basically crystals.
Well, because there's 2 things that come to my mind on that. One is, how can you make a product? You're extracting this from mother's milk, so you're going to have a resource of mother's milk.
So can I just pause and grab my water, and then I'm going to answer that in an awesome way. Thank you. This is fun. All right. Thank you. Okay. So Paul, I think one of the things that we've been talking about is sort of the, going back to the first principles.
Mm-hmm.
First, do no harm. We don't want to create any harm. Is taking these molecules from mother's milk ethical? My answer is no.
Well, if the mother's giving you the milk and she has extra, I mean, what's your rationale there?
So think about milk banks and donor milk.
Right.
Like that needs to go to babies who are in need, right?
I see. Yeah.
So from a supply chain perspective, I don't believe it's ethical for donor milk that could be applied in real time, right? I'm the beneficiary of human milk and donor milk.
Mm-hmm.
My son was the same way, right? We knew everything. My wife got mastitis, right?
Oh, bummer.
And yeah, tremendous bummer, right? And it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And we were blessed to be able to have access to donor milk, and then also my knowledge of these oligosaccharides and being able to supplement them early in life in accordance with infant clinical data to intervene in the.
What about goats and sheep's milk? Because they're supposed to be highly compatible to humans.
So that's why every morning I do have a cup of goat milk.
You can have it right up from the goat's udders right here. We make our own cheese and everything. We got Angie, and where the goat milking goes on every day here.
Paul, you're going to have to kick me out because I love goats. I had a pet goat named Nanny when I was growing up, and goat milk is absolutely my favorite. And one of the reasons why goat and sheep milk is so important is because it is enriched in milk oligosaccharides. And maybe that's where we think about these different, because, and then maybe that's where we move away from HMO. These are mammalian milk oligosaccharides. And yes, there are specific structures in each mammal milk. And that's why we know these are so important, because in humans, there's nowhere near the diversity and concentration of these molecules than any other mammal, right?
It's interesting.
So we know they correlate to what we would call complexity. And again, that's the anthropocentric model, which I don't believe in. I believe, all living things have sentience and have consciousness. And I think, there are many animal species that are probably much, much wiser than we are. Certainly.
I don't know of any animal that poisons its own environment, lights forest fires, and kills itself, and on it goes.
Exactly. And that's, we're here for a different curriculum, let's just say.
Yeah, we are.
Than some of the other ones.
So I'm curious, how are you going to deal with this issue and still be able to produce the amount of these
so check
HMOs that you need to be able to produce to help people?
Okay, so check this out. This is the fun thing. So when we foundationally get here, remember I said financial toxicity was something that would be unacceptable, right? And one of my parameters was, if I develop these as drugs, right, and I introduce them to the world as like a prescription pharmaceutical path, and don't worry, we're going to do both. We're going to have a supplement and we're going to have a prescription pharmaceutical. So there's going to be early access, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I wanted to make sure that these were fully accessible to everyone on a global level. Not the distorted United States pays an inordinate amount and then it's inaccessible to everyone else. And so when we first started looking at these, the molecule that I formed the company around, it was called 3SL. It was a unique one of these oligosaccharides. It cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per gram for it to be synthesized. These are extremely complex molecules to synthesize. But when I saw the power of it, I then looked at some of the other molecules and I said, wait, this is amazing. There's another one called 2FL that's actually the predominant oligosaccharide in milk. It's like 30% of the concentration. So you're like, okay, so nature's giving us clues This one's really important.
Yeah.
And that one had seen an investment of over decades, billions of dollars in synthetic biology. So these are genetically engineered organisms that are produced in fermentation tanks with the substrates of lactose and glucose that can output this molecule.
Oh, good.
And it was because it was discovered that the infant formula was, big surprise, is not healthy.
No shit.
Big surprise. It's terrible. It's actually pro-inflammatory. There's a 2016 paper that conclusively demonstrates that the current marketed infant formula is pro-inflammatory. I mean, we're talking about raising IL-1B, IL-6, TNF alpha, like threefold over what a breastfed infant would have. It's ridiculous. But what was seen is that by putting in a small amount, and the amount that ultimately was seen was 200 milligrams per liter of just a single fucosylated oligosaccharide, brought the systemic inflammation and also the monocyte activity in some ex vivo studies to the same, identical to breast milk, right?
That's impressive.
So it's amazing. And it's been known since 2016 when it was published. And my question is, like, why is this not the standard? Like with this, and I'm working, and I'm gonna, with the new administration, I will be interfacing with them to say, like, this actually needs to be mandated to be in all infant formula sold in this country. And so to do that. And so, but going back to the point about manufacturing, it means that multiple groups have scaled up the manufacturing for this compound so it could be produced at cents per grams using both enzymatic synthesis as well as synthetic biology approaches, and is currently, available on ton scale for the infant formula market under food grade conditions. And so what we're doing is adapting those supply chains to convert it into pharmaceutical grade material, but knowing that it could be done at scale so cheaply that when I look at the pharmacoeconomics on what benefits I can deliver to patients, we're actually going to be able to create a profitable company, which can then, of course, reinvest in R&D and actually make the investments to fully elucidate the properties of this amazing class of molecules. But we can price products at below the value we're producing to the patient and also to the entire healthcare system. So imagine being able to create, I mean, this is regenerative capitalism here, right? I mean, we're injecting value and space back into the system. And it's based on the scale, because the way I think about at least the first oligosaccharides is they're pre-commodified, and that's what's created this market stalemate. And so I'm the guy sherpaing these through this complex, red tape pathway because they're cheap, but no one has access to them.
What are they being used for now?
They're being used in select infant formulas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of times you've mentioned that they are synthetic or synthesized. Could you clarify that? I have concerns on the word synthetic.
Yeah. Well, so I use synthetic biology because that was like a Silicon Valley buzzword. People know about Ginkgo Bioworks as these are produced in recombinant organisms. So these are produced to produce these most efficiently, they are produced in recombinant organisms. You brew them like beer, basically.
Okay.
So you're brewing them like...
So they're not a synthetic molecule, they're a natural molecule.
So they're natural identical. So the molecule itself is absolutely identical to the one found in nature, but they're produced because a human gene has been put into a microbe that then is being fed the building blocks of these that then becomes our factory from doing it. Basically, we're outsourcing the mammocyte biology.
You've created a massive breast.
Basically, it's a giant, it's like a beer tank breast.
Yeah. There's something that you said that I want to share with you. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but I've looked into this type of thing a lot, and because I've studied soil science quite extensively. And that is that you mentioned that these HMOs are like crystals. And my experience of my own spiritual research on DNA is that it's a cosmic antenna system that draws in information from a vast range of the cosmos, from the sun to the moon. Any form of cosmic light is accessible to the DNA, and crystals are amplifiers of subtle signals. They're amplifiers of any electromagnetic signal or whatever type of crystal you use. It'll change what you're amplifying. But have you ever considered that these molecules may actually be interfacing with the subtle energy environment of nature and bringing in information that is informing the biology in ways that are not physical? In other words, just like thought, if you think the thought, I'm going to raise my arm, the thought itself is not something that you can weigh or measure. It's the spirit that is moving the body. Have you considered that these molecules may be actually a spiritual interface with the entelechy of the environment, the soul of the world, let's say, or the soul of different animal and plant and bacterial species that could be using these molecules as a two-way radio system?
Yeah, it's something that I've pondered. Myself and my co-founder Jason Ferrone, we've had a lot of late night discussions about that concept, because we don't even know how these vibrate, right? There's like there's a whole thing that people don't understand, and like everything's viewed somewhat statically, right? Like when you look at like these molecules, but we have no idea what they look like vibrationally. And I mean, that's what kept the research from so long, is when you think about these on like a molecular weight basis, like they're hard to see with any, because they look the same based on the aperture that we have available to us. So that's something that, on more of the esoteric side, that is on my radar. But what's crazy is that we haven't even fully elucidated their functions just in the empirical sense as well. But I do suspect that they are some sort of transference. They do some transference. And when we look at these, these are, and this is another area where I think lexicon creates a silo. And because by another name, these are called glycans, right? And they're sugars. And when you look at glycobiology, that is the language of the cell. Like glucosylation is metadata. It's metadata, right? It's metadata on molecules. Like people think like, oh, well, this protein does this. And you're like, well, depending on the glucosylation, it's read completely differently. Our immune system reads like that's a little tag where they check your ID and they say, wait, this guy's flagged. That's like the glucosylation. And so there absolutely must, I think there must be something.
You need to talk to my wife when you're here, because she's very skilled at biogeometry, which can measure the vast frequency of subtle energies. And Ibrahim Karim, the founder of biogeometry, could probably give you the information and help you identify the subtle energy frequencies that are involved. There was something else that I wanted to share that slipped out of my head for a second there, but it's I just think this like there's such a vast opening for you here. It's crazy. The thing that I wanted to share is that these molecules are in water, and water has a frequency range of 65 octaves, which is almost bordering on the infinite. And so once you take a structure like that has antenna qualities and you put it into water, you're opening up a whole new ball game.
Yeah, and so this is something that, so we're going to do some experiments when we get together, because now, so let's see how this resonates with you. These compounds are so hydrophilic, so you can dissolve about like 5 grams into like 100 mils of water. So what you're talking about is like these have that affinity. So we should totally check out what you're able to read on the energetics of it.
Yeah, if you bring some, I'll get me and Angie together with you, and we'll do some investigations. There's a lot of other ways I can look at them. I'm clairvoyant, so I would find that very interesting to explore that with you. And the only reason I'm throwing this on the table is because that's just how my mind thinks, because I have seen so many things through my clairvoyance that aren't talked about in books, but I think turn out to be extremely important. And a tip for where I realize that is, if you study the Russian soil science, and you can look at the book Science and Agriculture by Arden B. Anderson, he shows you that the microorganisms in the soil actually reconstruct the humus and the soil into micro antennas that pick up starlight, and that's what is used to charge the soil and energize the entire microorganism system. And that the organism, only the healthy organisms in soil, just like your gut microbiome has to have healthy organisms, only the healthy microorganisms that make healthy soil can actually shape the soil into the crumb structure that catches the starlight. And these are things that are just not commonly talked about, but they're super important, because if you put the wrong bacteria in your soil, you get the same kind of dysfunction you get in a human gut.
Exactly. And that's in some ways where, I look at like, why have I been sort of entrusted to these? And it's because when you look at my background, I have always been an outsider who's worked my way to the inside. And so it enables me to move without dogma. Like, how can I be made fun of, right? I don't have some PhD advisor who say, I put my name behind you. What have you done? Instead, I'm like this crazy character who's been autodidactic and can now run with the best of them, right? I've talked to leading VCs, and they're just like, where did you get your PhD or MD from? And I'm like, I don't have one, but I've read 50,000 papers, and I've created a pattern recognition system, and I've created a unique lens to view all this stuff. And I do so without bias. These are not my own invention, right? And I'm a steward here. This is my opportunity to do what humans are supposed to be. We're supposed to be stewards of nature and the ecosystem. And so I can do this without ego, without bias, and have a discussion with you and think about, hey, there are different ways that we should look at this. And then it even reminds me, and we say, hey, you know what? Like, the psychosocial environment, the maternal environment completely shapes the oligosaccharide profile in their milk. That's energetic, right? That's observational data supporting, what we're talking about, that there may be something subtle here. It's like, well, how can a psychosocial, thing then be essentially, it's an energetic program, right? On the infant, because they're going to have to resonate in that same environment that mother is.
Yeah, and what it reminds me of from my studies of biodynamic farming and Steiner's work, when they put biodynamic preparations together, which use bacteria and various homeopathics, they actually stir the liquid while they sing to it, and they open their heart to it. And that's a really critical component of a biodynamic preparation. So point being is, you may be able to go to the next level and create an environment in which your production system is actually using the right frequencies and harmonies to really enhance the product to another level.
Yes. Yeah. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. Same. And I forget, it's the Japanese scientist, remember, who looked at like
Masaru Emoto.
Yes, exactly. So, I talk to my water, right?
Yeah,
Right.
good.
Right. I talk to my water, and you're right. If these are being produced in an aqueous environment, and the way I view it is like, when you think about breastfeeding, the adaptive biological context of these, what's the emotive frequency? It's love.
Mhm.
You like look at the picture I have behind me.
Yeah.
There's a transference of love from a mother, and so these absolutely are energetically charged molecules. And that, when I think about, and this is part of why I'm doing work to create our own manufacturing capabilities, because the other thing is I want to make sure that it's minimally harmful to the environment as well.
Yes.
That's super important for me. I don't want to create waste streams and I want to make sure that we're using ethical feedstocks. It's the same way. Like, I can't eat industrial produced meat because I can actually taste despair, right?
Oh my God,
I can feel
don't
it.
touch it.
You're right. It's why I have to go spearfishing for my fish, and I do not like taking the life of an animal. I will only take it when a fish presents itself to me, right?
Mhm.
And this is something that we, free divers, we've talked a long time about it, and we dive into a school of fish and we set our intention that we're there to harvest, and we don't take aim. The fish swims up to the spear and presents itself for the good of its school, and as an offering, and we respect that gift. And so that's that's sort of the mentality that I bring into it, and which is where, again, I have to wear many different masks and disguises as I go through the capital creation environment of this. But I think it's important for your listener base to know that, like, what I'm integrating into this as a regenerative business is these values and this perspective. And that's why I'm saying I want to develop my own manufacturing capability, because even if we just infuse in the people doing the work, like, the meaning of the work. And one of the paradoxes, and this is where, even when we were a team of two, we went and we did a whole cultural exercise that Jason Ferrone, my co-founder, took a huge part of, because we needed to bring humanity back into this industry, because most, like, people working in the pharmaceutical industry, you have this high level of rhetoric where everyone's like, we're doing this for the patient, we're doing good, but they treat each other so poorly, and they've created like a toxic psychosocial stress environments. And you're like, how can you do good work from that, in that capacity? Because then you're infusing that into your product as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the consciousness in those, that Milu is unfortunately very materialistic and low, and even the dialogue on conscious being infused into milk and things like that would, you would be thought of as a weirdo. And
exactly, and that's why I have to do this on my own, right? That's why I literally have to create my own platform to do that. But then when I think about large scale manufacturing, because that's the other thing about this, is these are multi-gram per day things. So when we look at just like, when we apply them for adult use, the adult use case, all of a sudden, the amount that need to be produced exceeds global manufacturing capability. That's correct.
So you have to take that into your own hands.
So I have to take that into my own hands, and then do so in a way that's environmentally,
ethically, morally,
ethically appropriate. That's I'm not outsourcing this where there's going to be a substandard human inputs
Yeah.
where the feedstocks, I need to have responsible feedstocks. I can't be creating monoculture, right, systems that then are
Yeah.
disrupting things. So there's a lot of things for me to think about. And what I'm at the intersection of is creating the value chain so I can get the energetic resources so that then I can create a full ethical and regenerative supply chain that doesn't exist right now. But this is my role, because then, and it's why like I'm doing things in like the traditional scientific way. I'm just trying to meet everyone where they are on a consciousness and change continuum so that they can reach towards their highest good while doing this, because it's going to be a significant endeavor to do this right. And your point about like the vibration of these things, working with them changes you. It's changed me so profoundly.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
I can't think the same way I did when I was thinking about genetic diseases and saying like, well, look at the risk in the thing here. We've just noticed this, and I take them the other concept that leads to my conviction and helps me get up every day, because this has not been an easy journey by any.
No, but pioneering anything new is, there's an old saying, you can always tell who the pioneers are. They're the ones with arrows in their backs.
And so another foundational principle I had was I'm never going to ask anyone to do anything that I myself wouldn't do. And so I'm patient zero. And so I said, thought experiment. How could we change the pharmaceutical industry overnight? Every CEO is the first patient and the last patient to receive the experimental drug. So imagine if every CEO had to take their drug first and remain on it until it was
amen,
approved.
hallelujah, baby. The whole thing would change overnight.
Yeah. And guess what? I've done it. I'm living it. I'm not going to speak.
Yeah, well, that's important.
And so I'm probably the longest running adult on these compounds taken in therapeutic format on the planet.
Great.
And I have...
Bring me some.
So I will. I certainly will. And I've cured my IBS, my irritable bowel syndrome.
Great.
Which was... It was so severe, and this is, one of the things that I think about is humans are so good at norming to being pathology, right? Right? To finding comfort in dis-ease.
And the medical system facilitates that whole psychosomatic structure.
And we facilitate that.
I mean, psychological structure.
So here I am. I'm like, I'm a guy. Oh, look at me. I'm an Ivy League grad. I'm a top 10 law school grad. I'm doing all the things. And I'm having like bloody diarrhea 16 times a day. And it was by virtue of the smartphone that I was able to keep my career in check. Right. I was literally like working at the pharma company, and it was funny. I would like go to this in Carlsbad. There's a taco place called Senor Grubby's, and I lived walking distance to it, and I would just like eat there all the time. That did not work well with my IBS, and my boss at that pharma company actually like was a good friend. He's a good friend, and he's an advisor. He works with me now. He actually had to say like, hey, you can't call in sick if you go to Senor Grubby's anymore. Because I would like go there and I would like, and that was before I drank. And obviously like the ultimate anti-aging hack, whatever, is just don't drink alcohol. It's like the worst thing you could do for your body and your spirit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was banned from calling in sick if I did that because of the fragility of my gut. And these were things that you don't think about, like that I just normalized, where it was like, oh wow, I have to go out I'm going on Wall Street. We're going to go raise we're doing a a several $100 million raise on Wall Street. Okay, so I'm not going to eat for those days because
So you can stay at work.
so I could sit in those meetings
Mm-hmm.
in these high profile meetings and like because that was the only digestive control I had, where this impacted like my relationships. Like I couldn't have people stay over the night because
You need immediate access to the
need
toilet.
immediate access to the toilet, where flying on airplanes was problematic.
That's a bummer.
Was problematic. And so I normed to that. I thought that was normal. I thought that was just like the state of being. And so when I self-experimented and to literally have reclaimed my microbiome and constructively cured myself of that, like, I mean, I'm talking about I would say 95% symptom reduction with, and then with avoidance of certain food allergens that I've identified. That's amazing. And then I'm also the laboratory for the other benefits of these compounds. And so the same thing, I'm taking one that's not commercially available, and my atopic dermatitis, which like normally I would have lesions of, is gone. And I did the self experiment, and we saw the lesions regress.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did a withdrawal and they came back.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then there's some like other interesting aspects, which I think get to some of the more function. There's some other interesting aspects that, like, I have a bunch of patents that are based on anecdotes from me, right? Because when I first started taking 3-sialylactose, I played football in high school and college. So never let your kids do that. Like, like do not do that. But like, so I already had osteoarthritis and my pain went away.
Great.
So I just got pain claims. So actually my first patent, I think, was just issued from that self-experiment using these. And so there were these incidental findings, and some of them have been remarkably profound, which is that for example, 2-fucosyl-lactose, me and the other people who are taking it, we don't get sore after exercising.
That's fantastic.
And lo and behold, there was a paper that was published, and it looked at this compound in middle-aged mice. Of course, like we all need to be so grateful for what mice have done for us. Like they're intelligent. They're like,
they're close enough to us to be comparable in physiological response.
Exactly. And this was also very important because one of the things that I saw, and this is the gamesmanship in pharma, which is the transgenic models, right? And actually, if you go all the way back to my origin story, one of the companies I spun out when I was in law school was a transgenic animal model. And
transgenic meaning?
So it's basically you're putting human genes into an animal to try to make it look like a human system, so you can test a drug into it, which when you think about it is ridiculous because you're creating a chimera, right?
Yeah.
You're creating the answer you want to receive.
Sure.
Like you're basically creating a biased experiment by virtue of creating this model. And that's like really, I think, one of the things that is holding back biopharmaceutical research and development. But regardless, that was trying to actually create a maternal line model. So it actually was more natural, right? Versus artificial, where sometimes like they basically genetically engineer an animal to create a disease that looks like the human thing, and then they show that their drug works, and they're like, hey, now we can go raise big bucks and whatever. So what's cool about the oligosaccharides, getting back to this almost like me first approach,
Yeah. No chimera.
Is there's no chimera. So instead I'm saying, hey, there's something here. There's something that I'm sensing is here. And then guess what? We look at our friends, the mice, and we say, hey, we have some things in common. Let's look in your milk. Oh, wait, you have the same oligosaccharides in your milk. And this is shared mammalian biology. So this is not an artificial model. I can just take an old mouse and let's see how they do with swimming and how it affects their muscles. And lo and behold, you can give them this oligosaccharide and it works as well on their muscle development and function as anabolic steroids.
Awesome. Bring me some.
Yeah.
I'm older than you, man. I'm going to be 64 pretty soon here.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm about to turn 42. And
you're a young guy.
Yeah. I'm still a young guy and I feel amazing. And
yeah, great.
And the other aspect that's pretty interesting is like, for example, like 3-sialylactose, like what was behind that pain disappearance is that molecule is actually important in chondrocyte development. So chondrocyte, these are cells in cartilage. And guess what? What does 3-SL do? It actually guides the development of cartilage, and it's shown cartilage regeneration.
That's wild. That's such a vast market right now.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is like amazing.
It is.
Like,
it's been a really great exploration for me just to learn all about this stuff and have a chance to, explore all this with you. We've been going for quite a while now, so I should probably bring it towards a closeout just so it's digestible for people. We can always get into some more topics down the road together and explore other avenues. What's the do you have any idea about when this might be available for customers to buy so that people can get a hold of this?
Yeah, so this was funny. I'm building a wellness company because of discussions like this, because I'm tired of sitting here and saying, oh, it'll be available after it gets through these studies and blah, blah, blah. So I have my pharmaceutical side and I'm starting a wellness side so that there's going to be immediate access. We'll be launching that within the next few months.
Oh,
That's going
good.
to be Intrinsic Wellness. I'll make sure you have that when you air this episode that you have access to the portal so all your people can get on that. I'm partnering with Raiden Wellness, which is a clinic in Chicago, on that endeavor. So we'll be launching through functional medicine practitioners.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because we have the body of evidence, and so the way I view this is this. I'm not marketing, I'm educating, and so I'm putting together practitioner medical education based on this wide body of it's almost a diaspora of evidence. I'm compiling it, making it accessible, and then using it to empower practitioners and then making it accessible at a clinical grade spec to them. And so all of that's going to be happening within the next few months. And so I'll make sure that, I can share, a link to Intrinsic Wellness so that everyone can,
so people can know where to go and look and get updated.
So you can just get sign up and just be on the initial rollout.
Good. Very good.
Because I'm like jamming this to market because
the world needs it.
The world needs it. And it's time to take action. And with the new sort of regulatory context, I'm emboldened because because we have talked to the FDA and they do consider this new molecular entity drugs. But what I've luckily via the legal background, I see this paradox because I'm like, okay, but then these are generally recognized as safe to be included in infant formula, also through the FDA. And so then the next avenue is cool. Well, guess what? Structure function, baby. And let's let practitioners, let me give them the information, let me give them a clinical grade molecule, and then they have liberties through their scope of practice to, get it to people.
And what about, maybe this is another conversation, but just put this in your hat. Have you ever thought of making a drink that people could buy, just like they go to the store and buy water and soda pop, that has the HMOs in it, and then it would be a food quality product?
So I have, Paul, and it's interesting, and this is like, again, part of the nuances of this dynamic. In that early study on the infant formula, when they did dose ranging, and they were saying what amount of this oligosaccharide recapitulates to kind of the same inflammatory response as breast milk. It wasn't necessarily the highest dose. There's a U-shaped curve. So these are truly homeostatic molecules. And that's where I think probiotics went completely wrong, because they're just putting bacteria in everything.
Right.
And you're like, okay, what's the load? There is an optimal amount. Like, you can overload the system, right? You can overfeed a fish tank, right?
Yeah. Well, you can also wipe out species diversity if you do
Exactly. So there's a U-shaped curve. And so that's where I actually do think we must do the diligence to understand what is that exact stack.
Yeah.
And then before these are unleashed on the masses, right, where everyone starts adding it, oh, there's an HMO in it and it's healthy for me.
Yeah.
We need to have a system in it. And so I'm going to actually develop a standardization thing where people can actually just like scan a QR code and they'll see where that like contributes to their stack. Because each one of us, because you can view these as a daily stack. That's the way they are in milk, right? You have 200 and then you have a different concentration of them. And so I think we'll get there, but initially what I'm doing this as is almost like I'm genericizing it, because I think that's the way to go, because everyone wants to make it proprietary. And that's why these have failed to go to market, because everyone tries to make them seem proprietary. And I'm saying, no. Hey, guess what, Paul? The amount of 2FL you need and I need, it's different. We both need it and we both benefit from it, but it's going to be a different amount. So we're creating the the titratable structure framework for this to be applied on, so that everyone can find their distinct stack, and then we'll create enabling technologies so that people can navigate the world as, these things become probably more ubiquitous and are always in that homeostatic zone of intake.
Don't you think the body has its own uptake mechanism for regulation? For example, if you eat too much salt, you'll piss it out. So there's the body has some degree of regulation. I mean, if you take a drug like LSD, dose response is guaranteed, because it can't protect itself against that. But I know, there's studies showing, for example, if you give people piles of a different vitamin or supplement, it'll come out in the urine and the feces, because the body doesn't need that much.
So yeah, it's interesting. And that's where, like, what's cool about these is that they're non-toxic, right? There's like an LD50 has never been achieved with these. And, for your listeners, this is again,
toxic.
It's a horrific experiment where you give a molecule to some rats until half of them die, right? It's again, a brutal, disgusting experiment. And none has ever been achieved. It's somewhere over. Somewhere over 25 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is like, I mean, we're talking. This is above glucose, right? This is this is less toxic than baking soda, right? And And so at human beings, you can see like you can take 20 grams of it and no problem. But is it optimal benefit? And the optimal benefit is
Right.
actually much lower. And that's why like
Mhm.
why like there's again there has to be a responsibility aspect here where if people
Mhm.
just go willy-nilly marketing it and then they teach consumers in the more is better paradigm.
Right.
I mean, look at what happened with probiotics. I'm walking around and seeing people with big bellies. They have SIBO. It's clear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so again, I'm learning from the experience of all others and just saying like, how do we do this in the best way possible?
Well, I'm really glad you're doing
Yeah.
that.
So
Where do you want to send people to that are interested in everything we're talking about? You, your company, any resources, any websites that you want to share?
well, so if you want to learn about the pharmaceutical development, that's intrinsicmedicine.com. I am scrambling to put up a landing page on intrinsicwellness.co. And I think that's probably the one that's going to be the most interesting because that's where you're going to actually have direct access to the initial batches and the educational material on how to apply this. And so, I'd love to interface with people there. And then, I probably need to start a social media platform
Movement.
so that people can connect with me, because at the end of the day, I've been quietly working on this. I wouldn't say I've been in stealth mode, but I'm in quietly working on this.
That's a lot to work. I mean,
Yeah.
you're like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest with all these things you got to deal with.
Yeah, and luckily I have that. I do have a great team of people, right, who are aligned to the mission and the center of gravity that this mission has. It brings people that do have complementary skill sets, people that are special operators, right, in their distinct capacities, and so I think I'll maybe do some follow up, but I think let's have people check out Intrinsic Medicine. But I think the core repository for how to get engaged with what we're doing in terms of making this accessible now is going to be intrinsicwellness.co, and I'll have a landing page and interface up pretty soon so that.
Yeah, good. You got a good 3 to 4 weeks before this podcast will go through the pipeline and come out.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll build that because it's time, because I can't keep going on and talking about this. And
no, people need somewhere to go get an anchor and get into it. And maybe you could put some good research papers and things that are food for the interested intellect that wants to learn more about it.
And that's where I also think, like, because I don't want to just say like, hey, just wait for it, I got your solution. Let me just talk about what you can do right now. Yeah. Right? 95% of people are not at their dietary fiber guidelines, right? And so those fermentable fibers, those are oligosaccharides, right? Those are supporting your gut microbiome. Do the audit. Look at your Bristol stool form scale, right? If you're not at a 4, there's something wrong. You need to modify your diet. You have a diagnostic, a near daily diagnostic to understand what the inside is that you can literally visibly see and feel.
Wait till you see what I sent you.
So I can't wait. And like the way I always joke about it is like, I tell people, I'm like, hey, you know what a ghost poop is, right? Right? You have poop and then you're like, where'd it go? And then you're like, there's nothing to wipe. What just happened? Think about how you felt on that day. That was a good day. That was a really, really good day. And so there's an opportunity for us just right now in our daily life to just titrate our gut. And the other thing, I think, based a lot on what we talked about, is we're not meant to find the cleanest places to be dirty. Okay. And so it's find the most pristine environments.
Yeah. Healthy
soil to go get dirty in.
And healthy sex partners.
Exactly. Inoculate yourself. go to your local, organic farmers market, rinse those off, but, bring in the molecules there,
But
right?
don't use antibacterial
Exactly.
soap.
Don't use antibacterial soap.
Just rinse them with water in your hands.
Exactly. And then this is probably, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, but mine have certainly shifted. Like, I actually eat dramatically less vegetables than I used to, but I eat much more fruit, and really it's my understanding of all the natural insecticide pathways, right? Which are bioactive for us, right? All like the cannabinoids are natural insecticides at the end of the day. And that was the trial and error. Like, there are things like people are like, oh no, quinoa is so good for you. But it's like, for my gut, no. But
yeah, everybody's different. You're just gonna be having a great old time, you and your wife, when you see the book I sent you. I've got a chart called The Poopy Policeman, and it shows you how to read your own poop and what it means.
That's outstanding.
And I have a test for determining your metabolic type to start proportioning your diet based on your genetic and individual needs, and a lot more.
Yeah.
But I can't do well with fruit at all. I got a deep fungal infection when I was a kid. And so fruit is like death for me. I do really good on salads and just, vegetables and fish. And I can only eat meat that hasn't been raised on any grains, which limits it to just wild caught venison and things like that. If I eat anything that's been fed grains, I react as though I've just been poisoned with gluten. My whole body goes crazy.
Yeah. And that's really like what this is about, is it's just saying, like, we're a dynamic ecosystem. Listen, become aware of it. And I think a lot of your listeners are
they're hip to that.
They're really hip to that. And that's what we need to do. And so now it's just like, individualize yourself and customize yourself, and we have these adaptive allies within us right now. Let's try to directly communicate with them and support them. And imminently I'll be launching a tool by which you can communicate with much greater clarity and directiveness to them. So this has been
You mean a tool for interfacing with your gut?
With the gut, and through these oligosaccharides, through the launch, through Intrinsic Wellness.
Perfect. All right. Well, what a fantastic journey we've had. I really enjoyed it. It's so fun to not only talk to someone with a lot of depth of knowledge, but who has the spirit of a pioneer, an explorer, and an open mind. My hat is off to you. It's been a great pleasure to spend some time with you, and I'm really looking forward to furthering our relationship and having our families get together. And I mean, there's a million things I want to talk to you about, and have been restraining myself interjecting. What about this? What about that? Because it'll make a 5-hour podcast. But let's just be grateful that you're doing what you're doing, and that we've had this chance to share, and look forward to future opportunities to share. And I have a intuitive sense that you and I will be doing more things together that might be directly related to supporting your developmental product or other ways. I don't know, but it's been just a great journey. So I want to say really thank you, Alex. And I really my heart and soul are hopefully wind in your sails. That's my intention.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. This was exactly the type of interaction and connection that I needed at this time. So,
well, great spirit works in mysterious ways. So thanks to all of you for listening. I hope you feel inspired. And if you learned anything today, make sure you're taking care of your gut and you're eating real food from real soil, and not spending your money on poison companies that poison the planet and poison you. And thanks to my sponsors, and my sponsors are amazing companies that make amazing products and put money in the hands of biodynamic, organic, regenerative farming and farmers. And when you buy from my sponsors, you're not only taking good care of yourself, but you're taking care of the companies that are taking care of the farmers that are taking care of the planet. So it's a quadruple win, and some goes to the podcast as well. And I hope you guys are as excited and inspired as I am to be the change the world needs now. And Alex has certainly given us a reason to be hopeful because we've learned today that there are people out there that are not caught in the medical dogma. They're not caught in the blindness of piled higher and deeper or progressive head death, i.e. PhD, and that really do have a heart and soul in the game. And I'm really excited to have found Alex, and that to know that there's more people out there that I'm always looking for all the time. So if you find geniuses like Alex that you think I should know about, then send me an email through Penny at Paul Chek and give me a little intro and some place to look at, and I will certainly check it out. So thank you, all of you. Alex, thank you again. You're an amazing guy, man. Big hug to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, great spirit. Thanks. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Alex Martinez. You can explore Alex's company, Intrinsic Medicine, at intrinsicmedicine.com or connect with him on LinkedIn at Alex A. Martinez. For more interaction with Paul and to share ideas and ask questions about topics discussed in this podcast, we invite you to join his Spirit Gym program and community. There are 3 different levels of membership where you can participate in live Q&A sessions with podcast guests, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community, chat with other members, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study the comprehensive Master Key online program. Explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.